Awesome. What episode are we up to? 11.
10. That's
10.
Right.
Oh, the magic 10.
Yeah, double figures.
All right. You can actually start from there as well. This is producer John.
This could be.
Welcome to the SmartB Sports Update Podcast, episode 10. We are now in double figures, as we've just discussed. If the producer John puts up the pre-roll there. How you going there, Dan?
Good, thanks, John. Yourself, mate? We brought up the double figures.
Fantastic. That's always a good thing. Can't wait for the triple figures next.
Absolutely.
It's only, given it 2 a week, it's only 20 weeks away. Is it? I can't add up. It's 50 weeks away.
Yeah,
oh my God.
It'll come around quicker than you think.
Bad at math and geography. What am I good at? Sport. The NRL. Let's talk about the NRL.
Yes.
What's happening this week?
Panthers
we have the finals.
Storm, Friday, 7:50 p.m. at the Sydney Olympic Stadium. I'm going to call it that, John. I'm not going to call it by the sponsor's name.
I can't even remember what the sponsor's name is these days.
Yeah, so this preliminary final, John, comes 3 years after these two teams contested the grand final. Melbourne won the 2020 grand final 26-20. Penrith made that comeback after.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They
Melbourne
were down
led
like 20-0.
Melbourne led 26-0. Penrith got it back to 26-20. But Penrith, of course, John, have gone on to win back-to-back premierships since then. As I said on Monday, John, it's the 8th time in the last 9 years that Melbourne have been in the preliminary finals. Phenomenal record. And the Storm have met the Panthers 7 times since 2020, but the Panthers have won 5 of those, so they're turning the tide on the Storm after that 2020 grand final, John.
Yeah, so the odds are kind of, again, they always tell the story, right? Panthers started the week at $1.24 with Neds and are currently $1.19 with Unibet. That's unbackable. It's like a waste of money unless you're putting them on a multi. Melbourne started at $4.95 with SportsBet and are now at $5 with Neds. I think the big talking point out of this game is Jerome Luai. And his shoulder injury. He was originally meant to be back next week, and now there's some silly buggers going around that he'll be back this week. He's been named to play in the starting lineup. We won't know until an hour before kickoff if he's actually playing. He's got a dislocated shoulder. Okay, this is not something you want to come back early from. The main thing about a dislocated shoulder is until it's healed, it can pop back out, and then you start again. You don't. It's not like, pops back out, and I've still only got 1 week of recovery left.
So, John, in your role as a jiu-jitsu mastermind, have you had much dealing with dislocated shoulders?
Yeah, and we make the people sit out for weeks.
Okay, so I know it's a bit of a tough question, but how long sort of on average would someone need to sit out if they suffered one of those?
Well, around 6 weeks until you get back to like light training, I would say, to be fully safe. Obviously, these guys are professional athletes, have high-end physios and weight trainers and all that kind of stuff, have access to calves blood or whatever the hell Kevin did. But, I'd say around 6 weeks. It harkens me, because one of the things about, people are comparing it to Cooper Cronk, right? Cooper Cronk broke his arm, which, is like a couple of month layoff, and then played the grand final anyway. So there's a massive difference between Cooper Cronk and Jerome Luai. Cooper Cronk, made like 3 tackles and ran the ball once in that grand final, but organised the defence and attack. Now, Jerome Luai runs the ball like 20 times a game. And he's not going to be able to... He's not an organiser of men. That's Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, that's right.
He has to run the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
And, when you run the ball, you get tackled in the shoulder. It harkens me back to, in the UFC, actually, when TJ Dillashaw, who was previously the champ, came back and fought for the championship against Aljamain Sterling, and in the first round he got knocked over and his shoulder popped out. And then they popped it back in between rounds, and in the second round he came out and he got hit and his shoulder popped out. And it came out afterwards, like he knew this was basically going to be like his last chance to ever fight again for the championship, and he had dislocated his shoulder 4 weeks before and then just went, screw it, I'm going to fight anyway and hope for the best. And, that he obviously lost because his shoulder was dislocated. And that's highly likely to happen when you have a dislocated shoulder. Like, until it's fully healed, a knock can knock it back out. Yeah,
so this happened to Luai in round 26 against the Eels. So 27, week 1, week 2, week 3. That's only 4 weeks that he's been out.
Yeah.
Sounds like they might be fast tracking him, John. It is risky.
Yeah, you can strap it up as much as you want as well. From what I understand, like, I'm not a physio and I'm not a doctor and stuff, but yeah, like you said, I've had guys in jiu-jitsu who have dislocated their shoulder. You can strap it up as much as you want. It could still pop out. I know one guy who's not a competitor, but he trains jiu-jitsu as a hobby, who, one of the things about jiu-jitsu people is we're crazy. It doesn't matter if we're injured. I popped my rib once and the doctor said, you're going to have to, the medic said, you're going to have to take 3 weeks off, 4 weeks off. And I said, cool. This was a Sunday. And I said, so I can go back and train again on Tuesday? It's public holiday the next day. And then she actually mumbled under her breath. It was at a competition. She mumbled under her breath, fucking jiu-jitsu people. But yeah, like, I have one guy who's popped his shoulder out like 2 years ago. And I know one guy who continued to train and continued to train and continued to train, like, after a couple of weeks. And he regularly pops his shoulder out until finally, like, his physio and his doctor said to him, man, stop training, you idiot. Because it was such a like, I would see him maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, and his shoulder would pop out. And then he'd be off for 2 or 3 weeks. And he'd come back, like, early, and his shoulder would pop out. So, then it's... either they're playing silly buggers or there's 3 things, right? Maybe the dislocation wasn't as bad as originally reported. They're playing silly buggers just to get in the minds of Melbourne Storm, or they are rushing him back too early. And we won't know until 1 hour before kickoff. But,
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, John. I'm happy to run you through... We've been through Luai. Happy to run you through some other teams.
Yeah, yes.
So for while we're on the Panthers... we mentioned Luai. So centre Isaac Tago with a pec injury. He's also back on deck for Penrith. So Jack Cogger and Luke Garner go back to the interchange. Zach Hosking, he's back in the reserves. And Tyrone Peachey is now the 18th man. Nathan Cleary as well reportedly suffered a finger injury at training on Monday. I think he even had to go to hospital, John.
Yeah, he went for scans and then came back nothing.
But he's good to go. So
sounds sus. That also sounds sus.
Yeah, there's no issue there with Nathan Cleary. It could be a whole like distract the media using that to smoke screen the real story, which was Luai maybe. I don't know. Who knows what goes on?
Obviously, you're not going to send a guy to the hospital to get scans. I would hope. That just to get fake scans. But it sounds so sus. Like, it was so sus. Like, he hurt his finger and had to go get scans. And then the result was, it's fine, there's nothing wrong. Like, does it hurt?
As for the Storm, John, their team news, Jerome Hughes, he's been named to return from a calf injury at halfback. Xavier Coates, though, he's still on the sidelines with that ankle. So Remus Smith keeps his spot on the wing. Hughes' return sees Tyron Wishart go back to the bench, and Bronson Garlick moves down into the reserves. Forward Tui Kamikamika, he's been named in the run-on side despite having had that head knock. So there you go. That's the team news, John.
The Storm, did you see this news? They were training in Penrith jerseys.
Interesting. What did you make of that?
Well, I don't know. It's just a weird thing. You always see such weird things in rugby league.
I wonder where they got... They look like the official Penrith gear. I wonder where they got them from.
From Rebel.
Okay, right. You can get...
No, I don't know.
It's the thing. I wasn't sure. Is that like the... So I'd imagine there's some club gear where only the club wears it.
No, you can buy
you can buy all of it.
On-field jerseys,
right, okay.
Yeah. One of the things about the... like I've heard about the jerseys, though, is the ones you buy from Rebel are not actually the same as the ones. They're printed the same, but the on-field jerseys are made like with a big stamping machine, and they're made every week. Like they're not like the ones that are made that you actually buy from Rebel. But it's such a weird thing. Like, what is the purpose of this? It's mental game. I don't know. Again, like in these two guys, Craig Bellamy and Ivan Cleary, are both like masters of mental manipulation that have tricked everyone into thinking they're straight shooters. But they do weird stuff, like things with play around with injuries, play around with like getting photos of the Storm in Panthers gear.
They've mastered the art of that, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's like really like everybody thinks they're not like crazy like Des Hasler, but they both are crazy.
Yeah. It's just Des is more sort of outgoing.
Openly admits it.
Yeah. A few more stats on this one, John. The Panthers have won their last 7 finals games. No surprise, winning back-to-back premierships. Melbourne have won 5 of their last 6 at the Sydney Olympic Stadium. So a good recent record for them there. This is incredible, John. Craig Bellamy is going to coach his 50th finals game.
That's ridiculous.
That's a lot of finals games.
Do they count those cheating years in those?
I'd imagine they do, because they are official finals games. So I don't think you can really strip finals games from Craig Bellamy's record. And Penrith centre Stephen Crichton, thankfully he's going to the Bulldogs next year, John. He's got 4 tries in his last 5 games against Melbourne as well. So if you're looking on smartb.com.au at some of those try scorer odds, well, Crichton might be a good option for you there, John.
Yeah, anytime try scorer for him. That's going to be a cracker of a game. Like, obviously we talked about Melbourne aren't exactly in the best of form for the year compared to other years. But it's, you just said Craig Bellamy's playing his 50th final game. Melbourne always has a way to get up in the finals, and it won't be over until the very last minute. Cliche. If Melbourne are only down by 1 try or something like that, like 6 points or less, you saw last week, it's not over until the buzzer rings if Melbourne are still in it. Yeah, but it could end up like the Broncos game. That's
right, John. I got to admit, I've had a bit of a deeper look at some numbers here, and I'm a bit concerned for Melbourne going into this game. I've had a look at their season stats in defence and attack. So Penrith, this is after the regular season. Penrith first in attack with 645 points at 26.9 points a game. The Storm third in attack with 627 points at 26.1 points per game. So there's not much difference there in attack. However, in defence, Penrith are first in defence, conceding only 312 points. So that's 113 points better than the Broncos, who are second in that category.
Yeah,
so that's
massive.
A huge gap, and they only concede 13 points a game, whereas the Storm are fifth in defence, conceding 459 points at 19.1 points per game, John. That defensive difference there, I think, really puts Penrith in the box seat going into this game.
Considering they're both scoring the same amount, but Melbourne aren't able to hold out.
Yeah, I just think Penrith are just gonna put the shutters up, and Melbourne won't be able to get through.
And Jerome Luai is a massive loss if he doesn't play, but they've just got fill-ins over at Penrith.
I think they'd win comfortably even without him, John.
Yeah, that's right. It could end up like the Broncos game. It could be 26-0 or whatever. But yeah, if it's close, if Melbourne manage to keep it close, then Penrith better be in it right up until the last second.
And I think I've mentioned before, I really favour the defensive team in the big games, because the referee doesn't just put the whistle away; they also don't give as many 6-agains in the big games. So
that's better.
Yeah, I just think, John, if you're asking me for a tip in this game, I guess we're getting to that point of the discussion. I'm going Penrith by 24 points.
Yeah, you can't go past Penrith at $1.19 to $5.
Yeah,
that's the way it actually plays out. But you never know in rugby league. I think
you never know. But
Penrith is my preferred win in that, because I'd love a Sydney team in the grand final. I just don't want Penrith to win another grand final. We'll never hear the end of that.
So I know we've got a long way before we get there. But so if Penrith were to play. So you're obviously. So would you go for the Broncos over Penrith?
No. I'll always go for the Sydney team. But
so what about if the Warriors get through? Would you?
I'll pretend to go for the Panthers, but really be going for the Warriors.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I'm openly getting behind the Warriors here, John, all the way. So
I always want to,
we'll see what happens.
Sydney team, but yeah, I just. Can't stand it if Panthers win another one. We'll never
3 in a row. It's too many, isn't it?
Jerome Luai's Instagram will be awful. So the Broncos in New Zealand is the other game. The Waz on the Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I think this game is going to come down to the forwards. Although Sean Johnson was obviously key for the Warriors. There's been no movement in the odds. Broncos started the week at $1.28 with Neds. Finished up the week at $1.27 with PointsBet. The Warriors is $4 with PointsBet at the start of the week, and now $3.95 with Better. Again, the odds do tell a story here.
Yeah, absolutely, John. So it's the first preliminary final for the Warriors since 2011. Of course, this matchup pits Reece Walsh up against the club that gave him his first shot in the NRL. The Warriors have a former Bronco themselves, though, through Tamari Martin at 5'8". So the halves battle between him and Sean Johnson and Brisbane's Ezra Mam and Adam Reynolds will be a very interesting one in this game. I was just thinking, John, that decision by South Sydney to let go of Adam Reynolds wasn't wasn't a very smart.
It was weird at the time, and it still continues to be weird, and it will be one of the great mysteries of rugby league. It could appear on the Twilight Zone,
South won a premiership with him in 2014 and made the grand final in 2021. Then he leaves and takes Brisbane to a preliminary final this year. Meanwhile, South's missed the top 8.
Yeah, it's always going to be weird. He was the Rabbitohs' favourite son.
It's a strange one. So I'm sorry to go off on a little tangent there, but it's just...
No, it is really weird. I think the Payne Haas versus Aiden Fanua-Blake matchup is going to be... this is a forward matchup of the season.
Yep.
It's going to be amazing to watch those two just go head-to-head. Those are the two of the top best props in the world right now. And them running at each other is going to be, just... I think, on the back of those two... And the fact that those two exist... and they're matching up against each other, detracts from the fact that both of these forward packs are both really, really good. Yeah. And it's going to be an amazing forward battle. But who cares about the rest of them when these two guys are going to be running the ball so hard at each other?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it with the Warriors before. I think their best bet is to just be the Warriors, be that unpredictable team that doesn't play to a structure, try and sort of drive the Broncos' defensive line mad by just offload second phase play. That's going to be the Warriors' best chance. I think their best strength is that they're not a structured side. They just play what they see. They play what's in front of them. The Warriors, really, more than any other time of the season, they need to be the Warriors right now.
Yeah, and the key to shutting them down and preventing it is obviously targeting Sean Johnson, which, I've had a look at that Knights game. That was one of the main things. They weren't able to even get to him.
Yeah, Newcastle just let him run, didn't they?
He did whatever he wanted.
They put no pressure on him.
He was protected, obviously, from by standing back in the line and stuff like that, but he had so much time, so much space, and could do whatever he wanted. Obviously, the Broncos have a much better forward pack than the Knights do, with guys like Payne Haas in there. But if they can't get to Sean Johnson and shut him down, then, Warriors can actually take this. I don't know if I'm thinking with my heart again, but...
I'll put it this way. Of the two games, I think this one's far more likely to have an upset than the other one.
Yeah, we've been saying that basically all finals.
Yeah, we have, so a few more, just a bit more info on this game, John. Brisbane won the last finals clash between these teams back in 2011, winning 40-10 in the qualifying final. Coincidentally, that's the same score the Warriors had last week in their win over the Knights. But the Warriors, though, went on to reach the grand final that year, so that win for the Broncos didn't mean a whole lot. Brisbane are looking for their first premiership since 2006, while the Warriors are still without a premiership, having entered the competition in 1995. Yeah. These two teams met back in round 13 in Hamilton. The Broncos won 26-22, but that didn't mean a whole lot with Origin players missing, so can't read too much into that one, I don't think, John. No. Happy to run you through a bit of team news for this one. The Broncos are blessed with no injury concerns.
That's...
Getting that rest as well, of course, that helps. It's an added bonus at this time of year, John.
Yeah, so they had if you remember, they had Adam Reynolds a little bit injured, and that extra rest for him will be a massive, massive bonus.
Yeah, it's a godsend at this time of year. No concerns in that regard. So that means Jesse Arthurs, he keeps that left wing spot ahead of Corey Oates, who's still the 18th man. Again, incredible that a team's going that well where Corey Oates can't even get into your 17. Adam, like you mentioned, John, Adam Reynolds with that calf, and Pat Carrigan, with that foot injury, they had no issues in that game against the Storm, and they're cherry ripe, good to go.
Yeah, they're just going to... I know it's most likely going to be another one of those high-scoring Broncos smashing the Warriors out, but we can dare to dream. Warriors can win it. If they can keep Sean Johnson back and the forwards can win that battle, very typical rugby league, cliche, but it's going to be one in the forwards and giving this halves time to move. But Broncos have had, their forwards all year have been ridiculously good. They are the form forward pack of the competition, possibly even to the Panthers, but I would argue that the Panthers have gone so far on consistency over anything exceptional.
Yeah.
And the Broncos their forwards have just been stood up and just bashed every other team in the comp.
Yeah, as a temporary Warriors fan now, John, I really don't want them to. My biggest fear, it's not even that they lose the game; it's that they don't play to their strength. It's that I really don't want to see them go into their shell here. I really want to see them play expansive footy because it's the only way they're going to win the game. If they think they're going to win by playing conservative, no risk football, running one out, it's just not going to happen. Yeah. They need the likes of your Fanua Blakes to get those offloads happening, get them away, and get the likes of Sean Johnson getting over that advantage line, getting early ball to the outside backs.
So Charles Nickel-Klokstad, who can just carve any team up.
His meters last week, I went through it on Monday, his meters were phenomenal last week.
So if they have space, they can definitely, the Warriors can definitely win. So what it kind of comes down to, I think, to summarise is Panthers should win comfortably, and Melbourne, the only reason Melbourne can win is because they're Melbourne. Whereas Broncos should win comfortably, but the Warriors can win because they can do something like amazing. They can do something that's never happened, like something weird off the cuff football.
That's right. But then, now that you mention it, sorry to quickly go back to the other game, but you just said the only way Melbourne can win is because they're Melbourne. Well, we would have said the same thing going into the 2020 grand final, wouldn't we? And look what happened there.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, I'll just go through some Warriors team news well, John. So, yeah, obviously they're not going to change that team that had that big win over Newcastle in New Zealand. As you touched on, John, Sean Johnson, he's pulled up well from that calf injury, so he's good to go. So Josh Curran with a dislocated finger and Marata Niukore with a knee injury. They're both named and expected to play, even though they did suffer injuries last week. Centre Adam Pompey, he's the only player in the squad who's been on the field for every minute of all their games this season. So there you go.
Hard life, man.
Yeah, a few more stats on this one as well, John. The Broncos have won 8 of their last 9 finals games at Suncorp Stadium. The flip side of that, though, is if you can believe this, given the season they've had, they've only won 3 of their last 8 at the ground, which that's a real surprise given where they are.
That doesn't sound right.
I double-checked. They've only won 3 of their last 8 at Suncorp Stadium. So, yeah, there you go.
That's so weird.
I think maybe it's because... I can't work it out, but it is true, John.
Yeah, I believe you.
I'll just make that clear. So the Broncos have also only won 4 of their last 10 against the Warriors. And Broncos winger Selwyn Cobbo, he's got 21 tries in his last 21 games at Suncorp Stadium. Marcelo Montoya for the Warriors, he scored in he scored tries in his last 3 games against the Broncos too.
Okay, well, there's an anytime try scorer for you as well.
Yeah.
I don't really like first try scorers. I like anytimes. They pay less, but they're more likely to happen.
Yeah.
Every single time I bet on a first try scorer,
cash.
I think actually the last time I did a serious bet on first try scorer was in that year when Brett Morris was playing for the Dragons and Josh Morris was playing for the Bulldogs, and they had to keep suspending betting because those guys scored first try and they even had like the Brett Morris, Josh Morris double. The one time I took it was the one week they didn't do it. I was like, never doing that again. It's going to be a cracker. Very pumped for it. The game on Saturday is probably the better game, but anything can happen. So let's watch Friday as well.
Yeah, in terms of those attack and defence statistics for these two teams, John. So Brisbane are second in attack, scoring 639 points. So they were only 6 points behind Penrith.
Yeah.
So neck and neck with Penrith in that regard. 26.6 points a game for Brisbane. And I'm talking about the regular season, obviously. The Warriors, 7th in attack, scoring 572 points at 23.8 per game. Not too much difference there. Brisbane second in defence, 425 points conceded, 17.7 points a game. The Warriors third in defence, conceding 448 points, 18.7 a game.
That's not something you normally hear about the Warriors, that they're good at defence. They've been that 2005 Tigers team for the past 20 years, where it's just like, screw it, we're just going to score as many points as we can. Doesn't matter how much we let in, as long as we score more. Which, while true, is not a good tactic to.
I think if you're letting in about 18 a game, that's sort of where you want to be. I think if you got that to your name, you're in pretty good shape. Yeah. And anything less than that is an absolute bonus.
It's just ridiculous.
So, in terms of tips for this game, John, what are you thinking?
I'm going Broncos. I think Broncos will win. I hope they don't, but I think they'll win. It's one of those head versus heart things. I want the Warriors to win, and then I can secretly support them in the grand final. You always got to back your Sydney teams. But I also really hope the Warriors win, because it'll be their first, and then it'll be every club has won one. Yeah, they're the last.
The Titans haven't won one.
Oh, yeah, and the Dolphins, obviously.
Dolphins haven't, but...
No, I don't care about them. They're Queenslanders. Sorry, Queensland.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Broncos as well, John. I just think the Warriors were sensational last week, but they had that home crowd. It's a different ball game up there at Suncorp. Well, it's just going to be... What the advantage the Warriors had in New Zealand last week, that's now going to be the advantage for Brisbane this week. It'll be a full house of screaming Queenslanders.
Yeah, from what I understand, there's a lot of New Zealand support in Brisbane, like New Zealanders and New Zealand support in Brisbane. But when it comes down to it with the Broncos and the Warriors as well, but Broncos, they have so many members who get pre-sale tickets and can get the tickets early. So the secondary team that goes to the Broncos during the finals, often their supporters just miss out. It's less than less that they'll have more support in the city, but more that they get the tickets, so they get to go to the crowd. And the Warriors will have a much smaller supporter base at the crowd, and the Broncos crowd is almost as scary as the New Zealand one.
I just think there's just too much strike in that Broncos team with Walsh, Cobbo, Mam, Reynolds in the halves, Payne, Haas up front, Carrigan. I think Brisbane will get it done. I tipped Penrith to beat Melbourne by 24. I don't think it'll be that big a gap. I'll go Brisbane by 10, John.
Yeah, but I think it'll be high scoring, a higher scoring game as well. There's a lot of rugby league news as usual. One of the things about the finals,
we never just get through it with only the previews, do we?
So Ashley Klein is out for the semi-finals. This is the number one referee in the game. He's been dropped from the semi-finals. He reffed last year's grand final. Obviously, it was because of those blunders with the Roosters Storm game. To be honest, actually, he's my least favourite ref. And I know, I used to listen to Bill Harrigan commentate, and I know Bill Harrigan disliked Ashley Klein's refereeing as well, because he tends to send basically every try up for review. Never makes a decision on the field. Drives me crazy. Video ref for tries is my most hated thing in rugby league.
Yeah, for a rainy day, we'll have that big discussion on...
I'm kind of glad he's out. I mean, I like the guy. I'm sure the guy's a lovely person, but from a refereeing perspective, he's my least favourite referee. Tell you
what, you talk about Bill Harrigan, Johnny. I wouldn't mind having him back as a referee. Yeah. Best referee of all time. You know what I loved about Bill Harrigan was he didn't take any you-know-what from the players. He made the decision. He didn't have to consult anybody. He was sort of like a benevolent dictator of a referee, Bill Harrigan.
Yeah.
He'd just make the call, and if anyone, I remember Gordon Tallis tried to argue with him in an Origin game one day, and Bill Harrigan just sent him off. But I love that style of officiating. No, I'm not copying that. You can go. Now there's too much consultation now. Too much. I don't want to upset anybody. No, just make your decision, back yourself. That's what Bill used to do. It doesn't seem like Ashley Klein does that too much, John.
It was the glory days of refereeing with people like Bill Harrigan and Tim Mander and the good old days. It's funny when you have the good old days of refereeing. We're supposed to hate the refs no matter what. But we fondly remember guys like Harrigan.
That's how bad the referees are now, that we're yearning for the old days of better referees.
It's meant to be like that for the game.
Who would have thought we'd go into this deep an analysis on the
Bring back the tough referees.
I do have a bit of news as well for you, John, if you would like me to share it with you.
Go for it.
So this Willie Mason, Tyson Gamble back and forth has continued.
I didn't.
So now Coach Adam O'Brien is waiting. So he's come out and criticised Willie Mason for having a go at Tyson Gamble on Twitter. I'm sorry, I thought commentators or pundits were allowed to just have their opinion and not have the coach intervene. And I get he's trying to protect his player, but Willie's entitled to an opinion and he voiced it. What's the big deal here?
I can't believe this is still going on. The fact that people respond makes it keep going. I mean, it's good because there's stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it gives us something to talk about. It does.
Just, man, move on. Like, also, you think Adam O'Brien, your season's over. Go to your review.
Yeah, like... You think Willie Mason cares what Adam O'Brien thinks of him? He couldn't care less.
Doesn't even know him, I can't believe it's still going. Seriously, it's time to...
That's what, as you said, the thing that keeps the fire burning with these things is a response.
Now, Willie's going to have to respond. And Willie will have to respond.
It's going to keep going.
Not because we need him to, because Willie needs himself to.
But as I said the other day, Willie never mentioned Tyson Gamble by name. If Tyson Gamble had just left it where it was, most people wouldn't have even known about the comment Willie made. Maybe a few, but it would have died a long time ago, this story. And now it's just turned into this day by day back and forth, John.
Well, his response should have been when asked, Willie's Willie. That's the thing. Big Willie's Big Willie. He has his opinion and that's it.
That's the thing. I mean, we love it as people commenting on the game, but if you look at it from Gamble's point of view, it would have been much smarter to just keep his mouth shut.
I know you got to respond.
But anyway, I do have a bit more for you, John. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of West Tigers news to get through.
Yeah, there's so much. It just every day is like a new
West Tigers
brick
day
in the ongoing saga that is the house that is West Tigers.
So, if you can believe this, John, and this is not a comedy segment, this is fact. So, the viewers, listeners out there don't need to adjust their audio sets. This is legit. So, Chairman Lee Hadjipentelis will remain chairman of the West Tigers for 3 more years after being re-elected at a board meeting on Monday.
The guy,
can you believe it?
You mean the guy that said the issues start and stop with the board?
Well,
it is a comedy segment.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry, John.
It is a comedy segment now. The guy that said Tim Sheens will definitely be the coach in 2024, that guy. Like, come on, man. The Tigers is just broken.
It's a sad state of affairs. You just don't see any way out. Well, again, for you to address your problem, you've got to recognise what it is. If you don't recognise what it is, it's just going to continue.
One of the things I read about this is one of the issues with this board is, with the Tigers in particular, is the members don't have voting rights. So it was like, it's very typical in rugby league. They're all like friends and they all hire each other and stuff like that. Some of them do good jobs, some of them do bad. When somebody's doing a bad job, it doesn't matter how good a friend you are, you got to get rid of them. And the Tigers are, like everybody at the Tigers is doing a bad job.
So, they've retained the chairman, John. I think we're in agreement that was the wrong decision.
Absolutely.
But what was the right decision, I think, was the retention of young gun fullback Jareen Buller. He's re-signed with the club until the end of 2027, was originally contracted till the end of 2025, and they've added 2 years to that. This line about a contract extension, I don't get that, John. There's no such thing as a contract extension. A contract runs out, you have a new contract. A contract never extends. But anyway, he's re-signed until 2027.
He's a junior, right?
Yeah.
And he was good this year. This was his rookie year. He was good this year, but I read the numbers this morning. 4.7 million was the number, and that's an overpayment. Yeah, but we have talked about the West Tigers. They have to pay over.
This is the thing. They don't really have a choice on this one, do they? They can't let him go. And they can't. I think this is one of those situations where they're backed into a corner. They've got to pay.
They have to pay overs to keep their juniors, and they have to pay overs to get external players. But it won't make a difference as long as their off-field drama continues. No matter how much the players and coaches we don't let them affect that. It's one of those cliches in rugby league. We don't let it affect us. Then why do you suck?
Yeah.
What was affecting you to make you come 16th then? 17th this year, 17th. That's going to take me a couple of years to get used to.
That's the thing. You thought they couldn't get any worse from last year. Coming 16th, they have. They've come 17th.
So it's never ending.
Yeah, we've been through it before. I think they need to be really looking seriously at the CEO's position. And, I mean, there's no point me even saying they should look at the chairman's position now because they've re-elected him for 3 years.
They were going to conduct a review, one of those reviews. Of course, you always got to get the review. We have to have the review. And they re-signed him before the review started.
Yeah.
So what if the review comes in and says, you need to get rid of your chairman? Now, then they're going to have to pay him out to get rid of him, right? Because that's how I don't know how the board works and stuff like that. But
there's a lot of problems with a review. I mean, the main problem is a lot of the time you don't need a review. You just work out what's wrong and you make a decision. Like a review, come on. The other problem with a review is that you've got a situation where you'll put tough questions to a club, right? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And they'll say, oh, look, we're going to have a review at the end of the season. So it just gives them that out. They just go, oh, look, we're not at the moment, we're not looking into it. We will at the end of the season with a review. A review's one of the most overrated, overstated things in sport, John. Most of them are a waste of time. You already know what the problem is. Just address your problems. You don't need to have a committee meeting and a review every time.
But the problem with the Tigers is that they're the Tigers. There's not a single thing that...
they need about...
What is the shining light, the one thing they do well? You know, you could put this phrase, like, when you do a review, I don't know about in rugby league and who does the reviews, but I've been on the receiving end of reviews, and I've actually done reviews of business, right? And two of the questions you ask is, what do you think is wrong? And the other one is, what do you think is right? And you put that to the Tigers, what do you think is right? Put that to anyone in the street, any Tigers fan, anything. What do you think is right? I can't think of anything they do right. I know we're hammering the Tigers, but like the simple fact is they came 16th last year, 17th this year.
But so you've summed it up really well there, John. You've summarised it perfectly. So that's all you need to do. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? There's your review right there. Yeah. It takes 5 minutes.
It doesn't take it's weeks, one of the things, like, in one of the reviews that I was on the receiving end of for a business I used to work at, it was awesome. The lady said, I don't work here, I don't care about this place, I'm going to be gone next week, and everything you say to me is confidential. I have no loyalty to your boss, I have no loyalty to your company. Be completely unfiltered, tell me everything you think is wrong. And I gave like a 10-minute speech of everything that was wrong. And she's like, okay, but again, and this one won't be confidential, I will tell the boss and everybody, tell me everything you think is right. And I gave out the things, because what I thought in my head was I could say whatever I want and it'd never get back. I could say whatever I want bad, it'd never go back. Whatever I want good, and it would go back. And apparently she went to like basically every employee and asked the same thing and just found common themes. And then went and said, this is your problem. And then it was all like fixed. And you know, you can do a review, but like you said, it just seems there's so many things in rugby league that are just things that are just like we're just kicking it down the road. And they do. I know that actually they are. I read this morning they are doing the review right now. I think they've spoken to Benny Elias already. But again, you don't make decisions while a review is ongoing if the review is serious.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
sure the end of that review, heaps of people are going to say we need to get rid of the chairman. Too bad.
So we could go into them and do the review. It would take us 5 minutes.
Yeah, I just ask everyone.
They should just watch the last 5 minutes of our podcast.
What are you doing wrong? What are you doing right?
There you go.
What are you doing right? You've got nothing.
It'd save them a lot of money paying someone to come in from an external company to do some review.
They should relocate and ditch everyone in the club. Players, like basically shut the whole club down and then reopen it somewhere else. So
while we're still talking about the Tigers and their back office problems, John, they are reportedly interested in hiring former Wallabies coach Michael Checker as their GM of football.
What does the GM of football do?
It's this Phil Gould created role.
Isn't that what Robbie Farah is?
Well, apparently he's close to Robbie Farah, so they want to try and get him into that role.
And what will Robbie Farah do?
So I think Robbie Farah will probably just be an assistant coach. But, I mean, look, that's if they can get Checker. They may not get him. If they don't get Checker, well, they'll just go with the plan of having Farah. So, John, I'd just like to make a bit of a correction from the last episode. So I said Robbie Farah had a hand in Jason Taylor's removal as West Tigers coach. I got that wrong. Farah left the Tigers in 2016. He went to Souths. Taylor was sacked as Tigers coach in 2017. Then Farrell returned to the Tigers in 2018, so he had nothing to do with Taylor's removal.
I forgot he played for Souths.
Yeah, so did I. I did for a moment, and I went, but I watched back our last podcast and thought I better check that. I checked it, and
wow.
So I've cleared that up for you.
I totally forgot he played for Souths. And then, but he definitely had a hand. Well, the Mick Potter thing was actually a bit of a shit go for everyone, I think, Robbie Farah included, because...
Yeah, it was Mick Potter, not Jason Taylor.
But, I mean, like, you know, the story went like Robbie Farah said something to Gordon Tallis. Gordon Tallis insists that Robbie Farah said it to him. Robbie Farah said he didn't. My opinion at the time was, even if Robbie Farah did say it to Gordon Tallis shouldn't have told everyone. You know, that was the kind of thing that I think
where Robbie brought himself undone there was that I think Tallis actually played with Mick Potter right at the start of his career at your Dragons. And so I think Tallis, to me, seems like a very loyal sort of bloke.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think what's happened is Tallis is an old mate of Mick Potter's, and Tallis has gone, you know what, you've said the wrong thing about my mate, or whatever you've done wrong to my mate, I'm going to out you here.
He outed him on the radio.
Yeah, and that's where Robbie was sort of brought undone there, I think, John.
Yeah, so
but yeah, I get where you're coming from. But I think Tallis, he means well. He seems like a very honest, loyal.
Well, you can never say which one is like lying, whether Robbie Farah said it and
Oh yeah, I think that obviously there's no doubt. There's no way Tallis would be lying about it, is there? But it's the question of, well, should that really have come out on the radio?
That's what I think. Like at the time, I was like, even if he did say it, you probably shouldn't have told everyone, Gordy. But too bad. The Tigers will continue. I think every basically since Monday when we had our review podcast, and we had some West Tigers news. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, there's been new news stories about the West Tigers. How can they be like such a basket case? Well, they need to do a review.
You think now that the season's over, they get a bit of breathing space from the news cycle, but that's just not the case at all.
We'll come to your review for you. There's heaps of other news in rugby league, though. So there's this Paul Vaughan mess in the Super League. Now, I used to watch the Super League every day as well, back in the good old days when I had Foxtel. It was easier to watch. And I would watch 7 days of football, and I've mentioned before, Catalans is my team. But the most innocuous thing in the entire universe happened in a game. Paul Vaughan was charged afterwards, and people are guessing that this innocuous thing was the reason for it. Now, the charge carries a 6-week suspension, and people are guessing what the charge was for. It wasn't confirmed at the time I checked, was that the opposing player was taking a lot of time to stand back up, so Paul Vaughan grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him up. That happens every day in rugby league. And if they're suspending Paul Vaughan for 6 weeks for that, then there's something really wrong there.
Yeah, I had a look at it, John, when I saw that you'd put it on your in your notes there, and I just couldn't believe it. Just couldn't work it out. How do you get 6 weeks for that? I mean, I know they're different competitions, but we talked about that Jack White biting incident.
2 weeks
Jack
for biting.
White gets 3 weeks for biting someone, and Paul Vaughan gets 6 weeks for just pulling someone up in an everyday act.
It happens every single day. Every single rugby league game, you see it once or twice, whether Super League or NRL. So that's bizarre, and I hope Paul Vaughan gets nothing. Obviously, he's an ex-Dragon and had barbecue
an ex-Bulldog as well. That didn't work out too well, but anyway.
Barbecue game with the Dragons.
The COVID barbecue incident. How can we forget that?
And also, I went to an event once when he was at the Bulldogs, and he was wearing no socks, which quite upset me.
I was wearing
no socks. He had shoes on with no socks. That's playing in my mind. I've got a photo of it actually. So let's wear socks, bro. One of the other things that I was looking at actually, because there's all signing news coming out. So mass cleanouts have started. There's a lot of clubs cutting a lot of players, and so far no signing news, because signings normally happen after the grand final. So just to break it down, the Cowboys have already cut 6 players. Just not re-signing, getting rid. Bulldogs are apparently axing between 8 and 11. Knights have axed 10. Knights made it to the finals and they're axing 10 players. The Dolphins have 5. Now, the reason I mentioned the Dolphins is because how do they even have 5 players after 1 year to let go?
Yeah, it's a bit hasty, isn't it?
And the Dragons have 5 so far, with apparently up to 10 more to go.
There you go, John.
So one thing about all this, Melbourne Storm have 0 and 0.
Yeah.
They're gaining 0 players, they're losing 0 players. But there's going to be, in the October-November period, a massive amount of player signings. Now, obviously, there's no major big names being cut. These are all like, some of them are first grade, like top 17 players, but none of the massive $1 million men and stuff like that. With the Dragons, apparently they're trying to get rid of Amon. And then there's the Ben Hunt nonsense still ongoing. He's not one of the players that's being let go, but he is still in the news saying that he wants to leave. In these news articles and interviews that he's doing, he's saying things like, I've spoken to Flano, I'll be there next year, I would prefer to leave, and things like that. That's the captain of the club. So he's the first they should let go. If they're looking at cutting another 10 players, he should be the first to go.
I think... Sorry, I knocked my mic. I think the issue with Ben Hunt, John, is that if he's such a superstar that a lot of people make him out to be, well then why are the Dragons coming second last on the ladder? That's the thing. It's not... We all know Ben Hunt is a really good footballer, okay? That's not the issue here. The issue is, are you getting what you pay for on the salary cap? Ben Hunt, obviously, is going to cost a lot on your salary cap. If Ben Hunt's the key playmaker and his team's coming second last, well, is Ben Hunt all he's cracked up to be? And then you look at the issue of, well, as you said, he's causing this destabilisation as well as that issue. So you put those two together and there's a real argument you could make that the Dragons are better off just letting him go and starting again. I mean, look, then they're not going that well with him. They're coming second last.
Let him go.
So let him go, regenerate, start again, and see if you go any better. It feels like this Ben Hunt Dragons relationship is just not worth the trouble anymore.
Just
John.
let him go. And there is obviously, like I said, all the signing news happens post grand final. It's like November because November 1 is the negotiation because they can negotiate with players that are finishing next year.
Yeah, so I think it's after November 1 you can then sign players for 2025.
Yeah, but that comes into it when you're also signing players for 2024 because if you can get think of it like I could get Daly Cherry Evans for 2025, I'm not going to sign Ben Hunt for 2024.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Daly Cherry Evans isn't going anywhere, but he's the comparable, right?
Yeah.
So it does come around after November because they start planning 1, 2, 3, 4 years in advance and stuff. But look, I like I've said before, I think Ben Hunt will be the domino that brings down the whole castle. He'll go, he'll be let go. He'll go to either the Titans or the Dolphins. Broncos aren't going to take him. Titans or the Dolphins, and now it's leaning in the direction of the Titans. And then there'll be a stack of these, there's 40 players available. A stack of signings across the board post-November, and it's going to be crazy. I remember there was a year when 11 coaches changed places. It's going to be like that. There's going to be 50, 60 players who move clubs post-November.
Well, I think his new destination, and whichever club it is, John, as you said, it looks like it could be the Titans now. There needs to be a buyer beware on this. Look at where the Dragons are now. Under Ben Hunt's watch.
Since he started, they haven't actually set the world on fire or anything like that. He's always been, though, it's the Dragons, right? He's always been their best player year in, year out. And it's because there's five eyes in individual brilliance.
Yeah.
That seems to be the style of football that the Dragons have been playing since Ben Hunt came. And I'm not saying it's because of Ben Hunt, but every single player has been out for themselves, running the ball for themselves, tackling for themselves, and being individually brilliant but sucking as a team. And rugby league is a team sport.
Yeah, and Ben Hunt is a really good footballer. There are two categories of really good footballers. Category 1 is your really good footballer who takes your team into the top 8, top 4 challenge for a premiership. Category 2 is your really good footballer who's really good individually but doesn't take your team anywhere and the team comes in the bottom 4.
Yeah.
And that's where Ben Hunt is.
I just hope that gets resolved soon. Obviously, it'll be another month we're going to have to listen to Ben Hunt. And as a diehard Dragons fan, I hate it so much. I'm thinking of, is there any way I can scrub my internet to filter out every time the words Ben and Hunt are said together? It just won't display. I got one more other thing. So Val Holmes' suspension is being handed down. It's a 1-week suspension. It's the same suspension as Brandon Smith and everything for the white powder for Brandon Smith. He's looking at a 25 to 30K fine. He's probably going to be named for Australia in the squad, so he'll miss The Samoa match. That's the opening match of the Pacific Championship, it's called. I checked.
Yeah, I know you don't really like us talking too much about this sort of stuff, John, but yeah, a really silly thing he did. Is it the worst thing anyone's ever done in the world? No, it's not. Just stupidity. And we pay our fine, we do whatever we do, and then we move on.
Suspension. I just think it's like just a silly silly thing to happen. Obviously, it's news, and it should never be news because no player should ever do silly stuff like that. Why don't they learn from Brandon Smith? You know, it happened to him last year before, whenever it was. I can't remember. It's just stupid.
It's not rocket science. If you're an NRL player, you really need to be careful with that sort of stuff.
Everybody takes drugs, and I'm pretty sure the NRL doesn't test in the off season. But you just don't post that crap on social media, man. Yeah. No. So that's all I got for the NRL. As usual, it was like an hour.
Yeah, it's a long NRL segment.
So we got the AFL.
Collingwood and GWS Friday night at 7:50 PM at the MCG. John,
big news for this match is Nick Dacos is back.
Nick Dacos is back. You're right about that.
Magpies are obviously the favourites. $1.58 at the beginning of the week, out to $1.63. Again with Betfair. Every week it's with Betfair. Play your way. Gamble responsibly. Bet your head not over it. But Betfair seems to be the best bookmaker for AFL.
Yep.
The Giants, $2.55 at the start of the week and have moved out to $2.56 again with Betfair. You mentioned that the Dacos returning, John. Yeah, he's been missing since round 21 with a hairline fracture in his knee. And Collingwood coach Craig McRae said he will come in place of Taylor Adams there for the Pies. I know the teams haven't been officially named, but that's what will happen. That's what will happen. Of course, that's what will happen. You're not gonna. He's obviously got no form, no fitness, but he's Nick Dacos.
Yeah,
probably the best player in the league.
I mean, he's regarded as one of the Brownlow medal favourites this year, John. It's only his second AFL season, so there you go. So the Giants won a thrilling preliminary final between these two teams back in 2019. So these two teams...
That was to get into the grand final?
Yeah, they did, and they got thrashed by Richmond that year in the grand final. So these two teams, even in the Giants' short history, these two teams are no stranger to this stage, John. The Giants are running hot. They've won 9 of their last 11 to get to this point. Collingwood have been the best side all season, but they've been a bit scratchy late in the season. These two teams play that up-tempo, highly entertaining style. There'll be another sellout at the MCG for this one too.
Yeah, there'll be 100,000 people there. Obviously, most of them will be going for Collingwood, but hopefully they'll have some GWS fans as well. I know there's been a bit of controversy because Carlton fans and GWS fans have bought their tickets to the thing, but then the airlines have been accused of price gouging.
Alright, okay.
So, sucks. But,
so Collingwood thrashed GWS in their only meeting this season, John, by 65 points.
That was when Collingwood was in really...
It was, and it was before the Giants really hit form later in the season, so we probably can't read a whole lot into that one. Collingwood's strength this year, John's been their really good starts to games this season. They kicked 4 goals to 1 in that sensational opening term against Melbourne, and that proved to be the difference with them getting home by 7 points. In that one, Collingwood's also got a great conversion rate of turning inside 50s into scoring shots. Against Melbourne, they produced 15 scoring shots from just 37 inside 50s. To give you a comparison, Melbourne had 69 inside 50s in the same game and had only 18 scoring shots.
Yeah.
So Collingwood really good at converting those inside 50s into scoring shots. That says a lot, that Demon statistic of lack of scoring shots says a lot for Collingwood's defenders, like skipper Darcy Moore. He had 11 intercept possessions against Melbourne, while Isaac Quainer had 9 and Jeremy Ho had 8, and they'll need to be at their best to stop Toby Green, Jesse Hogan, who kicked 4 against Port, and Jake Riccardi, who are all going well for the Giants up forward.
So one of the things I saw about the Giants is they have no fear about away games this year. They won 9 of 13, which is 69%. But they actually lost at home around 50%, so that's quite funny. They have no fear about going to Melbourne. Obviously the majority of AFL away games are in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But 100,000 fans at the MCG, vast majority of them barracking for Collingwood will be a big, it's going to be difficult. The odds are close. The odds in these matches are closer than in the NRL. This is the closest one out of all the 4 finals games this weekend. And, I think heart says GWS, head says the Pies, man. You can't go past them.
Yeah, in terms of the Giants, Sean, I think one of their strengths.
Okay, back again, like nothing happened.
And we're back like nothing happened, according to producer John, whose battery ran out.
We're back, we're away. I was just saying, John, before our little outage, KO style outage we had.
It's gold.
So from the 3rd minute of the second quarter to the 14th minute against Port Adelaide, the GWS Giants turned a 3-point deficit into a 28-point lead. So Collingwood are going to have to watch out for these real, strong bursts that the Giants can have within games. Tom Green, Josh Kelly, Stephen Caniglio, Callan Ward and Ruckman Kieran Briggs, they were all on fire against Port Adelaide. By half-time in that game, the Giants were plus 17 in clearances, plus 18 in contested ball and plus 78 in disposals. And 7 of their 9 goals in that first half came from stoppages. Collingwood's midfielders are going to need to be on guard, John, to stop a GWS assault.
That's what I mentioned on Monday that I saw about the Giants, where Port would start to get on a roll, and then the Giants would just go no, and just smash them, them, and get on an even better roll. So there is a danger there. This is the Warriors Brisbane game.
Exactly. It's the same thing.
GWS can win. It's highly unlikely they will, but they can. Like I said, the odds are much closer, $1.63 to $2.56 with Betfair. Bet with your head not over it.
So I think we might have got you think Collingwood will win this one?
I think Collingwood will win, but I want the Giants to win. I actually want the Giants to go all the way and win that pendant.
Okay, my head and my heart say Collingwood. It's a good combination, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think Collingwood will get the win, John, not by much. I think the home crowd advantage there at the MCG and the week off, the freshening up, I think we'll see Collingwood just get over the line. It'll be nothing like that 65-point win they had back in round 9. Yeah. It's going to be much closer, but I think Collingwood get the job done here, especially with Nick Dacos back on deck.
So that's not at 7:50 or something, right? 7:50 p.m.
7:50 p.m. Friday night. So the exact same time. The good thing about
KO, you better work.
Yeah. Well, that's Friday night, John. The NRL and the AFL kick off at the same time. The good thing about Saturday, though, as we talked about on Monday, is the Brisbane Lions Carlton game kicks off at 5:15 p.m. at the Gabba. So it's before that Broncos Warriors game. And that's what a Saturday for footy fans that is, John.
That's obviously a Lions home game. Lions unbeatable at home this year, especially. Started the week at $1.42. Betfair again. Finished the week at $1.39. That's again, I think they're unbackable, unless you want to make a little bit of money and put them in a multi. Carlton started the week at $3.15 with Unibet and finished the week at $3.50 with Betfair. So they have blown out a lot. Well, not a lot, but they have blown out. The Carlton. I think Carlton got that win last week on an emotional high. And it's the kind of thing where it was really amazing, and there's a lot of emotion that's quite draining, and well done to them, for their supporters and for the team, but they're just going to get smashed by the Lions.
It's going to be an interesting one, John. I mean, you talk about Carlton, it is their first preliminary final since the year 2000, so a long time between drinks. I think in terms of the other preliminary finalists, Collingwood and Brisbane were in the prelims last year, so not a very long wait at all for those two clubs. The Giants, as we talked about, were in one only in 2019, not that long ago, but 2000 is a very long time ago now, John. So this game, of course, puts Carlton coach Michael Voss up against the club that he captained as a player to 3 straight premierships in 2001, 2002 and 2003. Around that same time, Carlton were last in the prelim finals, coincidentally, John.
So he knows how to beat them then.
So Carlton have won 11 of their last 12 games, John. So they are running hot, including that heart-stopping semi-final win over Melbourne by just 2 points. As we talked about on Monday, Blake Acres with that winning goal, and Sam Walsh, he's also in great form. But this Brisbane Lions record at the Gabba this season is just staggering, John. 12 wins from 12, including that massive win over Port Adelaide in the qualifying final.
That's it. I think that's the thing that brings them home. That Brisbane crowd, that Brisbane home game advantage, it's not something you can go past.
Yeah, so Joe Danaher and Charlie Cameron, they're going well up forward for the Lions, John. In the only meeting between these two teams this year, Brisbane won by 26 points at Marvel Stadium in round 8. The Lions, they're the best clearance team in the competition, John. They win an average of 6 more a game than their opposition. In that qualifying final win over Port, they kicked 13 goals directly from clearance wins. Lockie Neal, he's number 1 in the AFL for clearance wins with 8 a game, while Oscar McInerney, he's got 5.4 a game, and Josh Dunkley 4.9 a game. Those two players provide the Lions with plenty of clearances. Carlton are ranked 2nd in the AFL for winning contested ball with a differential of plus 9.6 a game. They got the better of Brisbane in that area in round 8 with plus 25, but still lost the game. They are a different team now, though, John.
Well, they're riding an emotional high, and that's not good when it comes to matches like this where the Lions are just in form at home. You can't win on emotion in this kind of situation. I just can't see anything going well here for Carlton at all.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to our tips, John, you seem to think the Lions...
I think they'll smash them.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think they'll get home by about 3 goals. I can't look any further than that 12 from 12 at the Gabba this season. Like Collingwood, they've had that week off. They're ready to rip and tear. So I think we agree if we're finalising our prediction here for the AFL, we think it'll be a Collingwood-Brisbane grand final, and that'd be a rematch of the 2002 and 2003 grand finals.
Yep, and probably Collingwood will get it.
And Brisbane won both of those. I think 2002 it was very close. I think Brisbane only won by about 9 points. 2003 it was a blowout. Brisbane won easily. So we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Sorry,
one whole week ahead.
Yeah, I should.
But it's exciting because next week it is AFL then NRL one day after each other. So it's a great weekend.
Yeah. So there you go, John. It's a comprehensive wrap of the NRL and AFL previews.
So now we can move to Eddie's Rugby Union World Cup.
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention one more AFL thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Oh no, I have one as well actually.
Okay, great. Yeah. So. I just wanted to get your opinion on this, John. Former Collingwood president and prominent media personality Eddie Maguire, the great Eddie Maguire, has criticised post-game coverage of AFL games. Maguire doesn't like how the boundary line reporters just instantly go up to players with a microphone after the games. He said players should get the opportunity to take the moment in before having a microphone put in front of them, and he wants the TV cameras to focus more on the reactions of players and fans in the immediate aftermath of a game rather than see players get interviewed. So he wants to see the jubilation of the players, the jubilation of the fans, and also, the shattered players on the losing team in big games like this at the end of the year. I think Eddie's got a real point on this one, John, because a lot of the time players get interviewed and they never say anything interesting. They just dish out cliches. I think Eddie Maguire's got a point, John.
I saw this and I completely agree with him. I don't like the in the NRL they have the half-time interview with players walking off the field either. I know it's like they want to have more stuff on TV, but actually I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
You'll get some funny stuff. I remember way back in 2005 when one of the Tigers players let rip real hard.
It might have been Chris Hyington.
Yeah, with some profanities in primetime television. They were like, whoa, wait.
Yeah, and I think the TV station got some complaints.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but fair enough.
Because it's not the time. They're not prepared. They're writing that emotion, either negative or positive, and it's not the time to be asking questions about what they think and blah, 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 blah. If you watch something like the UFC or combat sports, there's the fight finishes, then there's the announcement of the fight, and there's like a 5-minute delay before the ringside interviewer will interview them, and they usually have enough time to calm down a little bit and get what they're going to say. So I totally agree with him when he said it. actually.
I think player interviews in general, they're overrated, John. When was the last time you heard a player say something interesting or worth listening to in an interview?
Now that they all get media training.
Exactly. They all get media training. They all just dish out cliches.
Yeah, they very rarely answer the question.
Yeah, I wouldn't care if... I'd even go a step further than Eddie. I wouldn't even care if you just... And I know they're never going to do it. I wouldn't care if there were no player interviews after the game and you just showed the reactions. But certainly there needs to be a window to show the reactions before they interview players. Eddie's 100% right.
Yeah, I think so.
And now we're going to the other Eddie Jones.
Oh, no, I have one thing.
Sorry, you got... Sorry, I got ahead of myself there.
So, Melbourne have started their excuses for the year. You know, we discussed this last week.
The Demons.
Oh, yeah. There's their excuse for the year. Why do they get dropped? Why do they lose? And one of the things that they're trying to blame is that Angus Brayshaw injury. It caused them all to be upset and they couldn't concentrate on the match and so on. But look, it was an unfortunate injury. It was horrifying. We discussed it when it happened, but you can't use that. But forget everything I just said. Can't use that as an excuse when there is a statistical anomaly in your team. The Melbourne's issue is their inability to convert. You know, we know that. Everybody knows that. Just look at their stats. I think it was a silly thing to use. He's all right now as well. So I just don't think that... the excuses have started to come out, which is people protecting their jobs and things like that. They should have just waited till next year and seen how they've gone. They didn't need to start coming out with excuses, is where I'm going with this. I don't think Melbourne needed to make excuses.
No, well, John, this was a team that made the top four and went out in straight sets. I know Angus Brayshaw got injured in that first final against Collingwood, and it was terrible the way it happened, obviously, and we're glad that he's okay. But, they still lost that game, and what, are they going to blame that on losing the next week against Carlton?
Yeah, they did. They did. They actually tried to use it as one of their excuses.
As I said, made the top four, lost 2 games of football and are now out of the competition. You don't lose 2 full games of football because one player gets injured in one of them, John. There's a lot more factors to consider. There's a lot more that you need to sit down and look through before you just blame it on one injury, like Trent Robinson the other day. Highlighting that one refereeing decision from Ashley Klein. Again, a terrible refereeing decision, but it wasn't why you lost the game, Trent. This is the same scenario. You're right, John. Melbourne just need to, I think, maybe keep their mouth shut at this point.
They should have done.
Let the preliminary final combatants go about it. The grand final combatants, whoever they may be, go about it, and they need to start planning on 2024.
And then they can do a review.
Another meeting. They can hire somebody to come in and do a meaningless 3 months review.
Exactly. Yeah. So now we can move on to Eddie Jones's Rugby Union World Cup.
Yes, we can.
So Australia is playing Monday at 5 a.m, which means I might wake up in time to watch the tail end of it.
That's not bad, actually.
Yeah. I'm not going to wake up at 5 a.m, but my normal wake-up time is 6:15. I've obviously got to get dressed and things like that. But obviously the teams aren't named yet, so there's not much to preview. But one thing about it that we should touch on is Fiji will actually play Georgia on Sunday, the day before. And if Fiji win by a lot, they can keep Australia in that... and Australia don't win by a lot.
Third spot.
They can keep Australia in that third place spot.
Yeah, well, with that loss to Fiji has just brought the Wallabies undone, hasn't it, John?
Yeah.
Looking ahead to this game against Wales, these two teams have met 7 times at the Rugby World Cup. Australia has a 4-3 advantage. But Wales have won 3 of their last 4 against Australia in all competitions, John. So this is a problem when you drop a game like they did against Fiji. Then all of a sudden things get more complicated. Then all of a sudden you're taking on Wales and you don't have that good a recent record against Wales, and now you put yourself under serious pressure.
Yeah, so Wales started the week at $2.12 and Australia at $1.90. And Australia actually had an injury for one of their players. I can't remember who. I heard, in part, I didn't hear the name on the radio, but it's apparently a major loss.
Yeah, sorry, John, was it Fiji played Georgia, you said? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So Fiji's probably going to win that.
Yeah, well, if Australia beat Georgia by 20... Fiji beat Australia, well, Fiji will You would,
So-
in theory, Fiji would win that one quite comfortably.
Australia started the week at favourites, $1.90 with Unibet, but like close favourites, you know, like not a sports bet, $2.12 with Wales. They're now even at $2. So it's Wales $2, Australia $2. I think probably whatever the injury was, I should have looked it up. But yeah, as I heard it in passing on the radio this morning, and this is the most dangerous game, probably in the history of Australian rugby union. Especially with, I think with Fiji playing on Sunday, depending on the outcome of that game, that could really actually have an adverse effect on Australia's attitude, mindset, and everything as well.
How do you think it's going to go, John? What's your gut feel on this one? Are the Wallabies going to rebound and get up here, or...?
Based on the recent form for the past 7 matches, no. I think Wales might beat them.
Yeah, so Wales have won 3 of their last 4 against Australia in all competitions.
Well, even Australia's only won 1 in the last 7. 1 in the last 7. They've only won 1 in the last 7 overall. And they lost to Fiji.
Okay, I'm going to go with the Wallabies here, John. I think they can get it done. I think they can bounce back. I'm going to give Eddie Jones the benefit of the doubt. He's got runs on the board in the past. I think he knows what he's doing. I think they'll get the job done. If they don't, our conversation on Monday is going to be an interesting one, John.
Well, this is the thing, right? Because with Eddie Jones, it's we discussed it before. It's always a team building exercise. Unfortunately, he was given a team to build very close to a World Cup. So you don't want to be building a team during a World Cup, building a tactics, building your whole entire, basically rebuilding, especially an international team. So.
And I was listening to him before the World Cup, and obviously that press conference he did where he bagged all the media and everything and blamed everything on the media was just ridiculous. But one other thing that he said, which I found to be quite interesting, and you don't really hear coaches talk like this too often. He said that we need to be playing our best rugby towards the back end of the tournament. We don't need to peak early in the pool games. We need to play our best rugby when we absolutely need to. And I thought that was... I'm gonna really take him at his word there, and I'm really going to back him in and say that, he's got a plan here, and I'm going to back him to execute it, and he's going to have to. If he doesn't in this game, well, we're gonna have a big discussion. I
worry so much about it. And especially with the Basketball World Cup in Australia recently failing at that, I don't want to see more Australian failures, honestly. So he's hoping what's the time's the Fiji game? No, wait, George is playing Portugal. Who's Fiji playing? Oh, I've got something wrong here. 1 second, let me just check this. Fiji is... I should have looked up Fiji. There you go. Fiji, Georgia, Sunday, 1:45 a.m. Cool. So that game is going to have a big... wait, no, is that right? Sunday, no, that's 1st of October. I'm past. Fiji's playing here. Go back up.
Yeah.
The Rugby Union World Cup's too weird for me. So what? Okay, so all right. So I was completely wrong. Fiji's playing the following week. Fiji isn't playing this week.
Yeah.
So Australia needs to beat Wales, and then that Fiji game is going to have a big effect. But it is the week after. Sorry about that. I'm going to look like an idiot for 10 minutes.
That's all right. I mean, it's still
But
they're still playing it. I don't think it's your fault. I mean, what other competition do you have? This is only a 6-week competition, and who has 2 weeks off between group games all right, maybe in a full season like the NRL or the AFL, but in a 6-week competition, who has a week off in between group games?
It's such a weird... And
how does that make any sense?
I went on and on and on and on about how the basketball works so weird with the different weeks, even though they're every 3 days. Rugby Union doesn't even have rounds labelled in this the group stage, so it's super confusing. Trying to keep up with all of the ways that different World Cups work, because we're going to go to cricket in a minute.
Yeah.
And that World Cup is coming up, and that's even weirder. That's the weirdest one of all. But Australia is playing India tomorrow at 6 p.m. So tomorrow is a cracker. Does KO do 3?
I guess the advantage of the what you could do, I think the cricket starts at 6 o'clock Sydney time tomorrow night, so you can flick that on until the footy starts, watch all the footy, and then go back to the cricket after.
It'll still be going, yeah.
That'll be the plan, I reckon, John.
So India actually has a slight edge when I checked, but teams have been named. Cricket is weird. Squads have been named.
I can run you through this, John. So, it's a 3-game ODI series in India between Australia and India. Preparation for next month's World Cup. Game 1 in Mohali, 6 p.m. tomorrow night, Sydney time. So, some returns for Australia after all these players missed that South Africa series. Pat Cummins with a fractured wrist, Steve Smith with a wrist tendon injury, Mitchell Starc with a groin injury, and Glenn Maxwell with an ankle injury. They all return to the Aussie squad for this series. As I say, all 4 missed the series against South Africa. Mitch Marsh captained the side for that series. Travis Head fractured his left hand in that series against South Africa. So he is going to be replaced in the squad by Matthew Short for this series. So there you go, John.
So, I read one article that said that India has already picked their teams for the 3 matches in advance. Australia hasn't. For the first 2, India will be resting 4 superstars. Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli. And then Hardik Pandya and Kuldeep Yadav are not playing in the first 2 matches, but they'll play their full the World Cup team in the third.
I think it was Pandya who took 3 for 3 in the Asia Cup final where they rolled Sri Lanka for 50.
This is why though the beginning of the week India started with Neds at $1.80 and have gone to $1.91 still with Neds, whereas Australia started the week at total underdogs at $2.35 with Unibet and now firmed to $1.95. So odds are very close. These matches are meaningless, but it is important for Australia to show some form after that South Africa capitulation.
That's the thing. I mean, they are meaningless in terms of who cares about the results themselves. But we're at a point now where they're not meaningless in terms of the form you show because they're so close to the World Cup. So ODI cricket in any other year other than a World Cup year is meaningless in my opinion.
Yeah.
But now, this close to a World Cup, you want to be showing form. I know Australia have 2 more warm-up games after this one going into the World Cup, so the 3 ODIs against India, then 2 more warm-up games. So there's 5 games to go. And after that lacklustre series against South Africa, I know they were missing players, like we've mentioned, but to be 2-0 up and lose at 3-2, that's very sloppy, and they want to get back on track here against India, John.
That's what's very important for them. And the first 2 matches, if India doesn't play their superstars, I think win or lose, India won't change their process here. I think even if they lose the first one, they won't care. Even if they lose the second one, they won't care. They'll bring back their 4 superstars in game 3, and
and it's not even, you don't even really care about the results so much, but you care about the form. If India beat Australia by 2 runs and Australia play well, Australia would be happy with that.
Yeah.
But if India beat them by 150 runs, well, alarm bells are going to be ringing.
Especially if Australia's playing their almost number-one squad
so,
and India's not.
That's the thing. There's a good loss and a bad loss. So the way they play here is pretty much more important than the actual results.
I'm definitely going to be watching on Friday. Super annoying because of that whole thing with KO TV app not allowing you to split screen. I might have to plug a computer into my TV.
But I love the cricket in India though. The time slot is great for us. It's prime time TV.
Great time.
Unlike that Rugby World Cup in France, John, where the games start at 2, 3, 4 in the morning.
Going to be a great World Cup because we'll be able to watch. We'll actually be able to watch.
Yeah, I can't wait. It gives us something to talk about in October too.
I've got to think, that's all you got on cricket.
Yeah, that's all.
So, there is a UFC card this weekend. There is some, but it's not a big one or anything like that. But while I was researching it, I found this really interesting thing about October. October is actually a massive month for combat sports in total.
Yeah.
So you've got ONE FC on the 7th of October that opens the month. That has 4 title matches. So ONE FC is a little bit different to the UFC, where ONE FC has kickboxing, Muay Thai, submission grappling, and MMA all on the same card sometime. So on that card, now forgive me, they are Thai names, and my wife is half Thai, half Lao, so I should be able to pronounce them. But so you got Tawanche Sianche versus Superbon, who are 2 high level Muay Thai fighters. They're fighting for the featherweight world championship. On that same card, Tarnley versus Ilya Freemanov fighting for the interim featherweight MMA belt. Jonathan DeBella and Daniel Williams will be fighting for the strawweight kickboxing world championship, and Maki Musumeci and Shinya Aoki for the submission grappling world championship. 4 world championships on one card to open up October. Following week, in boxing, there's Logan Paul versus Dylan Dennis, which is on the, I think, co-main event of KSI versus Tommy Fury boxing card. Now, these are joke matches like
So
YouTubers.
Logan Paul, he's the YouTube...
He's Jake Paul's brother. So Logan Paul was famous first as a YouTuber, and then Jake Paul was famous as a YouTuber. Now both of them moved into boxing. KSI is another one of those YouTuber turned boxers. So again, these are kind of jokes, but... You know, it's an interesting card, and especially Dylan Dennis, for people who don't know, is like this guy who has like one MMA fight, and he's a submission grappler, jiu-jitsu, like guy who's competed at the highest level, but never really won anything like massive and strung together a lot of form. And then he's notorious for entering fights and pulling out. For the past, look, to be honest, in like the last 6 years, I don't think I've ever seen the guy fight. And so Logan Paul had to implement a pull-out clause where if Dylan Dennis doesn't turn up, Dylan Dennis has to pay Logan Paul $100,000.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully we'll see Dylan Dennis, the Uber combat sports troll, actually fight. So then, the next week, we've got Makhachev versus Oliveira 2 in the UFC. Which is a massive fight. Islam Makhachev he's one of Khabib Nurmagomedov's stable. Yeah. He took the championship from Oliveira, and they'll be fighting again. On that same card is Paulo Costa, the ultimate Twitter troll, versus Khamzat Chimaev, and Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. Awesome card. Yeah. It's in Abu Dhabi.
Khabib beat McGregor, didn't he?
Yeah, he's the one that neck cranked him. So a couple of weeks ago, while I was teaching a jiu-jitsu class, somebody asked me how to do that, and I said, "Don't do that."
Is that the one where did somebody run in from the crowd?
Yeah. Then Khabib jumped the fence into. See, this is one of the reasons Dylan Dennis is famous because Dylan Dennis is one of Conor McGregor's trainers as well, and Khabib jumped into the crowd to bash Dylan Dennis.
I love it. I love it. That's entertainment, right?
Yeah,
That's
it was
should be about.
Good and horrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
To finish up October, there's Tyson Fury, who is arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Tyson Fury
versus Francis Ngannou, who's an ex-UFC heavyweight champion.
He's Mr. Charisma, Tyson Fury. I love how he sings songs after he wins.
I love him. Like, I don't think Ngannou can beat Fury, but Ngannou is the guy who when he first started had like something like 12 first-round knockouts in the UFC. You know, just ridiculous. So that's in a 10-round, 3-minute boxing match. So there's nothing much left in September for combat, but in October it's the best month ever. Like, it's so good. It's really exciting if you're into combat sports.
Great, it fills that gap between the footy and the cricket seasons, John. But we do have footy and cricket that are ongoing as well, so
that brings
no
me to my
shortage of
next point.
subjects.
While researching combat sports in November, I branched out into other sports.
Right.
I found that October is probably the most stacked month of sport this year.
Great, sounds good to me.
So we've got Rugby World Cup that continues all the way through to the 28th. The final is on the 28th.
Yep.
Pacific Championship starts on the 14th.
Yeah, that's Rugby League,
Yep, with the Kangaroo, Samoa, PNG, Cook Island, New Zealand, Fiji, and that finishes the first week in November. So it goes, we finish Rugby League finals, there's a week break, and then the Pacific Championship starts. Super League Grand Final is 14th of October.
Yep.
The ODI series World Cup starts October the 5th. And if you're interested in American sports, the World Series in baseball is on the 24th.
So you already mentioned the Rugby World Cup continues on, didn't you? Yeah, you did mention that.
It finishes the 28th is the final. So there is so much sport in October. I thought it would be a slow month.
No, well, we're not going to be slowing down at all here, John.
It's so exciting. Like, there's so much going on. We're going to have big MMA updates, big rugby union updates, cricket.
Rugby League
continues all the way through to November. And then after November, we got Melbourne Cup. We do have a guest coming to do a Melbourne Cup preview.
And by then, the cricket will be just about starting, John.
Yeah, so that's
And then before you know it, we roll into the Australian Open tennis summer as well.
So I got some. I want to discuss tennis actually.
Okay, yeah.
Because
anytime.
after you mentioned,
Anytime.
after you mentioned,
I could be here all day talking about it.
After you
John.
mentioned,
Do we
like,
have another battery that
I hope so,
going?
John. I hope you're charging your other battery.
You might need 3 batteries, producer John.
So, after you mentioned Leighton Hewitt's blow up about the Davis Cup, I went and did a little bit of a look into it, and like I don't pay that much attention to tennis as a whole. I'm more of a majors type person. I love Leighton Hewitt. Even when everybody got the tall poppy syndrome on him and hated him, I still loved him. So this Davis Cup thing is actually like quite a big issue. The Davis Cup is now like a little bit of a joke, and my understanding of it was, as a fringe tennis fan, was it was a big thing before.
Yeah,
but the largest crowd number, now this is all speculation because it's not published, but there are photos everywhere on the internet of this. Largest crowd they have gotten in a Davis Cup match this year so far has been 500. 500, right? They had France versus Switzerland in Manchester with 100 people in the crowd. And now there are internet rumours, because this is a new thing that's come out about sports since the Soccer World Cup. Internet rumours that whoever runs the Davis Cup is paying people to go to the matches to get more people into the crowd and can still only get 100 people there.
Well, you've highlighted it perfectly, John. This is the issue with playing all the ties in a neutral venue where you don't have the fans of each country present at the ties. As I said on Monday, the old format was you play best of 5 sets. The tie runs over 3 days, and you play either home or away, and you have a great atmosphere because you're either playing at home in front of your home fans or you're playing away in front of the other team's home fans. But now we have this 1 week at the end of the season in a neutral venue where, obviously the host country only care about their team. They couldn't care less about all the other countries involved. So it makes no sense. It was actually... It's interesting you mentioned it, John. So Leighton, he's criticised the guy behind it, if you can believe it, John, is a guy by the name of Gerard Peake, a former soccer player, who, I don't know why I know this, John, but he actually dated Shakira there for a while.
Lucky man.
Don't ask me how I know that, John. Not that I read the entertainment news very closely at all, but... so he's actually the one, he's the brains behind this move to just one location. And Leighton's got it in for him and doesn't like him and is unhappy about it. And I'm with Leighton all the way on this, John. Leighton's got a point. Maybe they should put Leighton in charge of the Davis Cup to rejig it, John, because I don't know of anyone else in the world who's more passionate about Davis Cup.
Yeah, he loves it. And so... From what I understand, what I looked into as well, it's stuck like this for at least next year as well. Yeah. So you'll have another year of this. If you're getting only 500 spectators it's an international event, international versus international. Even the lowest watched attended sports that have international events get more than 500 people to events. Beyond ridiculous. The Davis Cup has some top quality players. Obviously, you don't have, Novak Djokovic isn't in the Davis Cup right now.
Yeah.
But the Demon Oar's there for Australia. There's a bunch of Australians that would have loved to go and watch, what's his name? Kokonakis. I can never remember his first name.
Tanasi.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I think early in this century, John, we had a great side in Australia. We had Pat Rafter, we had Mark Philippoussis, Leighton Hewitt, of course, and we had the Woodies playing the doubles. That was in the Davis Cup golden era where you'd fill, Rod Laver Arena or the Sydney Olympic Park. We have struggled to get the same numbers there, given that obviously Australian tennis isn't in the shape that it was back then, of course. But you'd still take that old system over this current system any day of the week, John. Federer, he didn't really make it a big priority of his to play in it, but he did. There was 1 year where he partnered with Stan Wawrinka to form a Swiss dream team, and they did win it together.
Of course they did.
Of course they did. Who's going to beat that team, right? And then you've got... But Nadal did make it a priority. He really put himself out for Spain and played in it a lot. So, I'd love it to go back to the old system. The old system's better than this system, John.
Yeah,
it's not perfect,
all they need to
but
do
it's
is
better.
look at crowd numbers to see,
Yeah.
because tennis is. There's a lot to do with the crowd numbers, like ticket sales is really big to tennis, They are quite expensive to go to. Ain't no $20 tickets to go to the tennis. And, obviously broadcast deals and stuff like that happen, but this is nonsense. Like, I looked more and more into it, the more upset I was getting, because, like I said, I'm not a massive tennis. Every major I watch when I can, except the US Open, and, we watched it in the office at work because of me. But, in Davis Cup, I was always like a fringe monitorer of. Like, I just wanted to know the results. But this is nonsense. They've really, really broken it. And if it's another year of this, coming back from it, the more they dig deeper into this hole, the harder it will be to come back, no matter who's in charge of it. So I hope that they can fix this, because it's like, if they're paying people to go and they're still only getting 100 people, that's really bad.
Yeah, we hope that common sense prevails on this one, John.
Yeah. And just one more thing. I also, another sport that I also follow on the fringe is netball. Collingwood have handed back their license in the Super Netball this year.
Why?
I think they just couldn't afford it. Like, people should go watch netball. It's really fun to watch. I've been to one live game in my life. I should go to more, but I don't have time. But they've been replaced by the Melbourne Mavericks, so that at least they have the same number of teams in the Super Netball. And that, after Australia won the World Championships, World Cup, I can't remember, earlier this year.
I think it was the World Cup.
Yeah, it's good to keep to get support for Melbourne and keep the same amount of teams. Hopefully they can get more support since we won. Yeah, cool. Anything else happening in sport?
I think we've got a wrap there, John.
October is going to be the greatest month of sport in the world. Don't forget to go to smartb.com.au for all your news and information. A lot of big things coming in the next couple of weeks. And we'll see you all on Monday.
Thanks, John. See ya.